Thank you very much for being here today. Good morning. My name is David Wells. I'm the chair of the Standing Senate Committee on Transport and Communications. I'm joined by Senator Donna Dasko and Senator René Cormier. Information sharing has never been easier than it is today. With a few taps, we can call someone halfway across the world as easily as we can call someone across the street. The collective knowledge of human existence is available to anyone with a cell phone. With all these advantages, we should be living in a golden age of journalism. Fewer cables, lighter cameras, filing from virtually anywhere. Everyone in this room has so many tools available to inform Canadians about what matters. And yet journalism outlets are shrinking and dying. Entire communities are becoming news deserts, leaving residents with little information about local issues. The pipeline of information, the communications infrastructure itself, is bigger and more powerful than ever. The committee believes that CBC or Radio-Canada can play a role in replenishing that pipeline, which is why members of the Senate Committee on Transport and Communications launched a study of local services provided by CBC. Today, we release our findings in our report, Local News Matters, Rethinking CBC or Radio-Canada's Role in a Changing Media Landscape. Before I turn the mic over to my colleagues, I would like to give you an overview of the study and what we've found. The Broadcasting Act sets out CBC Radio-Canada's mandate, which is to provide, quote, radio and television services incorporating a wide range of programming that informs, enlightens, and entertains, close quote. But that also shows just how important news is to the broadcaster's mandate. Information gathering, news gathering, is fundamental to informing and enlightening Canadians. Toronto journalism professor April Lindgren told us that 521 local news outlets have closed in 347 communities across Canada since 2008, while many local newscasts have been scaled back or shut down completely. Witnesses stress that the void left by the closure and downsizing of these local outlets can be filled by a renewed emphasis on local news from the national public broadcaster. So much of our lives is affected by what goes on in our communities, from courts and crime to City Hall. My home province of Newfoundland and Labrador has many small communities, rural, northern, and remote, each with issues to be resolved, questions to be answered, and people to be informed. Without local news, it's harder for people to get the information they need to be informed citizens. This goes double for official language minority communities. The president of Société Nationale de l'Acadie told us that francophones on the island of Newfoundland get their regional news from Moncton and Halifax, and while those in Labrador get service from Quebec. The committee welcomes January's announcement that CBC Radio-Canada is creating 11 new local bureaus across the country. The committee also welcomes CBC Radio-Canada's commitment to collaborate with other media organizations to expand the availability of local news. And we recommend that CBC Radio-Canada's mandate be amended to include local news so that the corporation will continue to prioritize initiatives like this. As a taxpayer-funded organization, CBC Radio-Canada is uniquely positioned to withstand the pressures on the media industry and to serve Canadians with news about the places we call home. We believe the recommendations in this report will help the corporation to do this. Thank you again for being here. Senator Dasko will now take you through some of the key recommendations of our report. Senator Dasko.
Thank you, Senator Wells. Good morning, everyone. My name is Donna Dasko, and I'm a senator representing Ontario, and I'm the deputy chair of the Standing Senate Committee on Transport and Communications. A healthy democracy depends on a strong media ecosystem with independent and diverse voices. Our committee's interest in examining the local services provided by CBC Radio-Canada was prompted both by global developments as well as significant concern about changes in the media environment in this country. News organizations are facing tremendous challenges. The decline in print newspaper subscriptions and the shift of advertising revenue toward online platforms have contributed to the progressive collapse of the business model of traditional media, that being television, radio, and print newspapers. Local media have been greatly impacted by these changes. As Senator Wells has just stated, 521 local news outlets had closed in 347 communities across Canada between 2008 and 2024. Three-quarters of those were community newspapers, but broadcast news was also impacted, with closures of CBC and global local newscasts and 37 local radio stations since 2008. Small communities have been impacted the most, according to the research, and news deserts, that is, communities without local media, have been created as a result. At the same time, 73% of the Canadian public expressed significant interest in getting local news, according to a CRTC-commissioned national survey in 2024. So clearly, local news is important for Canadians. Now, I want to highlight some of our committee's findings. We heard approximately 60 witnesses over the course of the study, including experts, civil society representatives, and community and private media outlets. Witnesses mentioned a wide range of concerns about the decline of local services and the need to enhance these services in general. And most stressed the importance of CBC Radio Canada strengthening its local and regional presence. The broadcaster also plays an important role in promoting Canada's arts sector, shaping the local and national identity, reflecting the diversity of the country and its regions, and preserving the vitality of official language minority communities across Canada. Our report includes 7 recommendations to government and to the CBC. I will speak briefly about the first 3. Recommendation 1, that the Government of Canada amend the Broadcasting Act to add, quote, the reflection of local communities and audiences to CBC Radio Canada's mandate. The Broadcasting Act currently does not state that local audiences should be specifically targeted, nor does it require that particular programming services be provided at the local level. Excuse me. Given the importance of local programming, and more specifically local news, the committee believes that the mandate of CBC Radio Canada should explicitly mention this. Our second recommendation, that the Government of Canada provide stable multi-year funding to CBC Radio Canada to enhance local programming, and that CBC Radio Canada continue to invest to enhance and prioritize local programming. On the topic of funding, some witnesses were concerned that past budget cuts had diluted local content in many areas of Canada where there are few alternatives. And our third recommendation, that CBC Radio Canada's next license renewal in 2027, the CRTC impose new reporting requirements on local services provided by the corporation on both its traditional and its digital platforms. These reports should be public and provide data on local programming and expenditures for these services. The committee noted that the financial data regarding local services provided by the corporation are not publicly disclosed. A comprehensive study of their local services thus cannot be undertaken without access to certain types of disaggregated data, such as staffing levels, revenues, and expenses broken down by local stations. Currently, their annual reports and the aggregate annual returns submitted to the CRTC do not provide this information. More financial information is needed to identify, about the corporation's local stations is needed to identify where the needs are most urgent. Now I will turn to my colleague, Senator René Cormier, for discussion of the other recommendations.
Thank you, Senator Dasko. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis heureux de prendre la parole ce matin comme membre du comité et sénateur du Nouveau-Brunswick. afin de partager avec vous le fruit du travail du Comité sénatorial permanent des transports et des communications. Le rapport dévoilé aujourd'hui est le résultat d'un travail de fond qui a commencé en 2024 et qui est alimenté de nombreux témoignages, de mémoires et d'échanges riches entre les membres du comité et la société civile. Ce rapport répond à une réalité alarmante dans le paysage médiatique canadien. Partout au pays, des médias locaux disparaissent, des salles de nouvelles ferment, privant des communautés entières d'une partie de leur voix. Or, l'actualité locale, ça compte, tel que l'affirme le titre de notre document, et ça compte plus que jamais pour les Canadiennes et Canadiens. Ce rapport met d'abord l'accent sur un constat clair. Les médias locaux sont plus que jamais essentiels à la vitalité démocratique de notre pays. Dans plusieurs régions, ils sont les seuls à couvrir la réalité quotidienne des citoyens. Ils racontent et relatent ce qui se passe sur le terrain, ce qui touche directement les gens. Or, ces médias sont fragilisés dû à différents facteurs, notamment l'apparition des plateformes et l'effondrement des revenus publicitaires. À la lumière de cette réalité inquiétante, quel rôle doit jouer CBC Radio-Canada dans ce paysage médiatique en pleine transformation? C'est la question à laquelle notre étude a cherché à répondre. En plus des 3 recommandations présentées par la vice-présidente du comité, l'honorable sénatrice Dasko, 4 autres recommandations sont présentées dans ce rapport afin de répondre à cette question. Il recommande notamment que CBC Radio-Canada mette en œuvre de nouvelles initiatives de collaboration au niveau local avec les médias privés et communautaires dans toutes les régions du pays. On pense par exemple au réseau des radios communautaires francophones présentes partout au Canada et qui contribuent de manière vitale à l'épanouissement des communautés de langue officielle en situation minoritaire. De telles collaborations peuvent renforcer l'information de proximité, soutenir les régions et contribuer à freiner le phénomène des déserts médiatiques. Le rapport aborde aussi la question de la confiance de la population envers le radiodiffuseur public. Il recommande que CBC Radio-Canada fasse périodiquement analyser par des experts externes le contenu des nouvelles et des reportages d'actualité diffusés par ses services d'information afin d'en évaluer l'impartialité et l'équilibre. Dans un contexte où la désinformation circule facilement, les citoyens ont plus que jamais besoin de repères fiables. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont attachés à CBC Radio-Canada et souhaitent que cette institution demeure rigoureuse, impartiale et crédible. Nous proposons donc que le diffuseur public fasse appel de manière périodique à des experts indépendants pour évaluer son contenu journalistique. L'objectif étant de renforcer la confiance du public dans cette institution médiatique et culturelle qui joue un rôle essentiel dans le partage d'informations entre toutes les régions du pays. Nous abordons également un enjeu important pour les communautés de langue officielle en situation minoritaire dans les recommandations, soit celui de la transparence, notamment en matière d'investissement dans les communautés de langue officielle en situation minoritaire. Radio-Canada est un partenaire important dans les coproductions télévisuelles impliquant des producteurs indépendants issus des communautés francophones en milieu minoritaire au pays. Nous recommandons donc que CBC Radio-Canada, en vertu de ses obligations en matière de loi sur les langues officielles et par souci de transparence, s'assure que ses investissements dans la production télévisuelle des communautés de langue officielle en situation minoritaire respectent clairement et de manière équitable le principe d'égalité réelle. Et pour assurer l'égalité réelle, il faut évidemment avoir des données claires, être en mesure d'identifier clairement où vont les ressources financières. Nous recommandons donc que ces investissements soient présentés de manière plus transparente et qu'ils reflètent concrètement ce principe d'équité. Enfin, nous avons entendu des témoignages très clairs sur le rôle de CBC Radio-Canada en situation d'urgence. Le rapport recommande que CBC Radio-Canada examine le rôle que la société peut jouer lors des situations d'urgence. Dans les régions éloignées et isolées où les autres radiodiffuseurs sont peu nombreux, que CBC Radio-Canada soit en mesure d'assurer une couverture complète en cas d'urgence. Dans certaines régions éloignées ou isolées, il s'agit parfois de la seule source d'information fiable et accessible. Que ce soit lors de feux de forêt, d'inondations, de tempêtes ou d'autres crises, comme la pandémie COVID-19, l'accès à une information continue peut faire une réelle différence. Nous recommandons donc d'examiner comment ce rôle peut être renforcé afin d'assurer une couverture adéquate lorsque les citoyens en ont le plus besoin. Au-delà des recommandations, le rapport aborde différents enjeux qui méritent tout de même notre attention, considérant leur connexion à l'appel à l'action de la Commission de vérité et réconciliation. Il y a une section du rapport qui fait état des bienfaits de la stratégie nationale autochtone 2024-2027 de CBC Radio-Canada, dont les retombées incluent l'amélioration des services et du contenu offerts pour mieux représenter les communautés autochtones. Des témoins ont partagé leur appréciation pour cette programmation en anglais, en français et dans 8 langues autochtones. En terminant, ce rapport ne propose pas de tout réinventer car, comme beaucoup de témoins nous l'ont rappelé, le diffuseur public canadien qu'est CBC Radio-Canada est au cœur de l'identité canadienne et accomplit un travail formidable. Notre rapport propose plutôt d'adopter et de renforcer le mandat de CBC Radio-Canada qui demeure essentiel, mais l'invite à revoir ses priorités afin de contribuer beaucoup plus adéquatement aux nouvelles locales et de mieux servir les régions. Parce que l'actualité locale, ça compte et plus que jamais, ça doit continuer de compter. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Merci, sénateur, sénatrice. C'est la période de questions. We'll go first in the room and then on Zoom. If you're attending on Zoom, please use the raise hand function starting now so I can recognize you later on. So to start with, Anja, National Post.
Yeah. Hi, Anya Kadadaglia, Canadian Press. So I wanted to ask what led to this recommendation about experts assessing CBC for fairness and balance, and I'm wondering whether you're concerned that it could be interpreted as you saying CBC is currently biased, or is that how it should be interpreted?
So thanks for the question. So that should be a part of normal oversight in any government-funded institution. I know we have an audit and oversight committee in the Senate that looks at these things, and we have independent people on that committee to do that. So this recommendation was born out of certainly a good governance perspective. It's well known that public trust in the media is declining. And I think this is one recommendation that could well, whether it could turn it around, it could stem that tide.
If I may add to that, Senator, thank you. I think we had testimony from Mr. Richard Stursberg, who was a former executive vice president of CBC English Services, and he had when he was in that role, he had undertaken such research, and I had a chance to go through the research. I thought it was really excellent. I thought it was really, really helpful, and although he recommended an annual examination of this, I don't think it would be, they don't need to do that as frequently as that. But I felt the methodology was very solid, and I felt it made a really great contribution to the discussion to be able to look at this research. The corporation CBC is criticized from time to time for that, and this is a good way to bring evidence-based research to bear on this topic, and it's an important topic. So.
I guess, can you talk a little bit about just a little bit more about your thought process there about this idea that calling for these outside reviews would lead to more trust in the CBC as opposed to kind of giving more fuel to people who say that it shouldn't be trusted at all?
Well, I think it helps answer the question of bias. Is there bias? Sometimes people make the charge, and it's hard to know what they're talking about. And if there is this kind of research, I think it helps answer those questions. So I feel it when we heard the testimony, and others had suggested this during the course of the study. I guess as a committee, we felt this was a very positive thing to put forward as a recommendation, and I don't think it's going to lead to less trust. I think it's going to be an important way to answer those kinds of comments that are made.
And if I may add, Senator, in French, je crois que les témoignages révélaient également que la population canadienne, enfin les témoins qu'on a rencontrés, tiennent à Radio-Canada CBC et veulent s'assurer que l'ensemble de la population canadienne ait confiance dans Radio-Canada CBC. Alors ce processus que nous proposons, ce mécanisme ou ce travail que nous proposons, il est là avant tout pour renforcer l'adhésion des Canadiens à Radio-Canada CBC.
We'll go to Davis.
Thanks very much, and thanks for taking our questions. Not to harp on the bias thing, but I have one more question about that. I can appreciate that it's good governance. I think everyone understands that. But I'm just wondering, is it the committee's position that the CBC coverage is in need of a course correction, or are we to view this as a preventative measure, to make sure that it doesn't become biased moving forwards?
So it could be considered both. But if there's commentary about the bias of CBC or any news outlet, and that's a public comment, and it's something that we've all heard, then this can not only act as a course correction, but our recommendations are forward-looking. And the intent of that is to ensure that Canadians are well served by an unbiased, federally funded media.
Before I ask a follow-up, do you think we'll get to a second round, or you think so? Okay. I wanted to clarify about the multi-year funding recommendation. Over the past few years, we've seen year-by-year funding fluctuate for the CBC. How long would you like that funding cycle to be locked in for moving forward?
Go ahead. Oh, okay, thank you. We don't have an answer to how many years. I think what's important is the stability of the funding, such that planning can be carried out in a better fashion, instead of having to respond to changes that happen on an annual basis. So we hadn't actually come down with X years, 5 or whatever it may be. It's just more than 1. Yes, more than 1 year for sure. And that's important for an organization like this to be able to or any organization, but this one in particular, to be able to plan and also specifically to take into account but the topic of our study, which of course is local news, local coverage, local broadcasting, and local services.
Yeah, so the other part of that, Senator Dasko is correct, but we wanted to not be prescriptive. We wanted to be objective-based. And so the objective is to have stable funding so that there's not that fluctuation that we've seen in the past. And we have the graphs within the report that show that there hasn't been stability, and certainly not stability in the services that we provide, rural Canada, remote Canada, northern Canada.
Et si je peux rajouter en français, nous avons entendu effectivement que les témoins aussi veulent que Radio-Canada CBC soit stable en matière de financement pour justement assurer les changements proposés et un renforcement de son engagement dans les nouvelles locales et dans les régions du pays. Donc, je pense que c'est de bonne loi que de proposer cela.
I see no questions on Zoom right now. Reporters on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function at any time, but we'll go for a second round in the room if you have some, Anya.
Hi. Sorry. So again, not to harp on the fairness thing, but just wanted to go back to your answer to Davis's question. You said that there are concerns, and this is at least partially meant to be a course correction. What are the concerns that you have about bias at the CBC? Can you be more specific about what led to this recommendation and the bias that you saw?
So what I'm going to talk about is what we'd like to see in the future. I don't want to go back and talk about possible biases. We've all heard them. Anyone in Canada that listens to that is involved in public life has heard these. So what we'd like is independent and people who are expert in this to look at this and to see if there is a drift, and that can be corrected in the future. If there's a drift in the necessity for CBC to be unbiased and fair, then it's not something that CBC can look inward and go, yes, we see that, or no, we don't see that. So that's the basis of the recommendation, to have independent experts. And as Senator Dasko said, we heard from witnesses, experts at committee along those lines.
Oui, bien, si je peux rajouter, c'est que c'est très clair que, puis c'est de notoriété publique qu'il y a un manque de confiance de plus en plus dans les institutions au Canada. On l'entend fréquemment et on a entendu des commentaires à l'égard de comment on peut renforcer la confiance et et assurer aussi une prévisibilité dans l'adhésion des Canadiens à Radio-Canada CBC. Donc, je pense pas que nous statuons sur le biais formel de Radio-Canada. C'est pas ce que nous avons entendu. Enfin, c'est pas ce que nous recommandons, mais nous avons entendu qu'effectivement, il y a peut-être des biais à Radio-Canada, et je pense que c'est légitime, en fait, de s'assurer qu'on puisse renforcer la confiance que les Canadiens et Canadiennes ont envers le radiodiffuseur public.
And any more information you can provide about like who should these experts be, what kind of things they should be looking at, just anything more about how you envision these reviews happening?
Yes, Senator. Well, as I said, I had a chance to look at the research that had been commissioned by the corporation a few years ago, and it's very thorough. And I would recommend you take a look at it to see how it was designed and carried out. So this was a very serious study, and I see great value in that kind of research.
Davis?
Thanks for taking the second round. I don't want to single you out, Senator Wells, but I will, if that's okay. You are a Conservative senator, and some of your parliamentary colleagues don't believe that the CBC, at least in English Canada, should exist. I'm wondering if, after this study, you have a different sense of the value that the public broadcaster provides, or if you'll be going into caucus or telling your colleagues that this is something that we should be maintaining.
So, as you know, I don't speak for my colleagues, whatever side they're on. But it's written into the CBC's mandate, and I have it right here, that it should be predominantly and distinctively Canadian, and it should reflect Canada and its regions to national and regional audiences. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. So my position is there is still a required service in rural and remote Canada, and in areas where either English or French is not the predominant language. I think there's a need for that. That's not always served by commercial outlets. So that's my position on it. And I'll quote Stephen Taylor now, and he said, if CBC didn't exist today, no one would invent it. So it shows to me there has to be a course correction in how CBC acts in the public and for the public.
And not to take us slightly off topic, but considering we're talking about the CBC this morning, I'm not necessarily looking for the position of the committee here, but as individual senators, do you guys have any reaction or thoughts on the fact that Hockey Night in Canada is no longer going to be on the public broadcaster moving forwards?
Me go there.
Go for it.
as a hockey player and as a hockey fan. So it's disappointing, and I think CBC has dropped the puck on that, and it's disappointing. Ever since I can remember, I've been watching a Hockey Night in Canada on CBC until recently. The market forces have taken over. It's a shame that Canada's national game is not freely available to all Canadians.
Et si je peux rajouter en français, pas spécifiquement sur le hockey, mais sur l'idée que Radio-Canada, en demandant un renforcement d'un rôle de Radio-Canada dans les nouvelles locales, ça ne nie pas l'importance de Radio-Canada de rassembler les Canadiens autour de grands rassemblements, de grandes émissions de nature nationale. Donc, effectivement, c'est toujours à regret quand on voit qu'une émission qui rassemble énormément de Canadiens est retirée des ondes. Ça ne participe pas à la cohésion du Canada et ça a un effet qui est moins positif, je dirais, dans ce sens-là. Donc, les deux sont compatibles, en fait, axés sur les nouvelles locales, tout en continuant à faire des grands rassemblements qui sont importants pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes.
On va terminer avec Inès, Franco-Presse.
Oui, bonjour. Merci de prendre les questions. J'en avais une particulièrement sur l'évaluation de l'impartialité de CBC Radio-Canada. Peut-être l'avez-vous mentionné juste avant, mais comment est-ce que vous comptez faire? Qu'est-ce que vous recommandez précisément? Parce que c'est quand même une grosse tâche, puis c'est très délicat. Donc, comment est-ce que vous allez faire? Au-delà des experts, c'est quoi les mécanismes principaux? Comment vous comptez évaluer l'impartialité d'un tel média?
You want to answer that? En fait, je pense que la recommandation est assez claire sur la nécessité d'avoir des experts qui viendraient ponctuellement évaluer là, le contenu de Radio-Canada pour s'assurer effectivement qu'il n'y ait pas que Radio-Canada continue d'être ce qu'il est, en fait, un média impartial qui se veut objectif dans ses prises, dans la manière qu'il couvre les émissions et l'actualité, je dirais.
Ces experts-là, je rejoins ma collègue en français, qui ce serait exactement? Est-ce que c'est des journalistes? Est-ce que c'est des gens... qui c'est exactement? Est-ce que vous avez des idées de qui c'est? Excusez-moi, j'ai pas eu le temps de lire le rapport qui est paru ce matin, mais est-ce que vous avez plus de précision là-dessus?
Je pense que la sénatrice Dasko a mentionné, maybe Senator Dasko, you mentioned something about the experts who...
Yes, for sure. Well, what they would do is they would commission a study, and that is the way it would be done. It's not done internally. It's done by hiring consultants and experts who know how to carry out such research. That's the way it's done. It's it's pretty clear cut when we actually, if they were to decide to go ahead with it, that is what they would carve out the terms of reference for such a study, the scope, number of years, or whatever the case may be, and go through the process of hiring experts. There are companies in this country who do this kind of research. I used to be in the research business. I didn't do this research personally, but my company didn't. But that's the way it's carried out.
Dernier follow-up, Inès, ou ça va? Vas-y.
Aussi, vous parlez de renforcer la présence de CBC Radio-Canada dans les régions. Vous le mentionnez dans le rapport qu'il y a énormément de médias locaux qui ont fermé depuis 5-10 ans. Donc, pourquoi ne pas avoir plus mis l'accent sur le partenariat que peut avoir CBC Radio-Canada avec ces médias locaux, notamment...
On l'a mis, oui, c'est une recommandation très, très spécifique qui encourage Radio-Canada, CBC, à faire des collaborations avec les médias privés et les médias communautaires dans les régions. Donc, je donnais notamment l'exemple des radios communautaires, des communautés de langue officielle en situation minoritaire qui peuvent être des partenaires de Radio-Canada.
Les partenariats existent déjà, mais comme ils sont vraiment au cas par cas, puis c'est en fonction des relations entre CBC, Radio-Canada et les médias locaux. Donc, au-delà de se baser sur des relations uniquement, comment encourager ça au-delà est-ce que c'est le financement? Qu'est-ce que c'est exactement? Est-ce que c'est des directives?
En fait, plus que nous recommandons que Radio-Canada modifie ses priorités pour axer davantage sur les nouvelles locales et une présence accrue dans les régions. Donc, à l'interne, Radio-Canada devra voir comment il fait ça en matière de stratégie. Mais je pense que l'objectif est très, très, très clair. C'est que le comité et les recommandations que nous faisons disent très clairement que Radio-Canada doit modifier ses priorités pour s'assurer d'être beaucoup plus présent au niveau local et dans les régions. Donc, voilà.
Merci beaucoup aux participants. This puts an end to this press conference. Thank you very much, senators. Merci, bonne journée.